Life is full of choices. We're making them every moment of every day. Every choice we make has a consequence, however small. The choices we make and the consequences that follow determine the experiences we have in life. Everyone wants to be free to live as they choose, but often our options are limited by the amount of money we have. Because of this, it is easy to believe that money can make us happy, because it enables us to get what we want. But is this really true? I don't believe so. I've seen too many wealthy people who are miserable, and too many poor people who are full of joy. What I've seen suggests that happiness itself is a choice. But if so, why is it not realized by more people in this part of the world? Could it be that our choices are not entirely conscious? That we have patterns of behavior in the background so ingrained that we are unaware of them? To determine how far this is true, we don't need anyone else to help us, because by the time we seek answers, life has already shown us what we need to know. I started my life in a small town in the south of England. My mother raised myself and my younger brother on her own. She had very little money, but she managed to find an old cottage that was affordable because it needed so much work. Unwilling to borrow money, she set to work renovating the house herself, whilst working to pay the mortgage and raise 2 young children. In this way, she set a strong example of independence to us, whilst providing a beautiful and natural environment for us to grow. Growing up in this environment was wonderful because there's so much space to run and play and just experience total freedom. And I'm very glad that I had this natural environment to explore as a child, because it's given me a lifelong connection to nature, which to me is a source of peace and happiness, which costs nothing at all, and it's always there. And I feel very sad that this connection is denied to so many children because they spend most of their time in front of a screen. But when I was about 6, our mother got rid of the television that we had because we were choosing that all the time. And sure enough, with the TV gone, we spent most of our time outside running around. Or in the winter, we spent most of our time reading. And so I think that decision to live without a television was very good for my development growing up. You might think that a child who's keen on reading and learning would do very well at school, but that wasn't the case for me. And I think it was because I was used to following my curiosity and just pursuing what I found interesting. And that's not how school works. It's very standardized, with everyone learning the same thing the same way, really to prepare you for the world of work, which is all about following processes. And that didn't resonate with me, but I went along with it, of course, because you have no choice. But then I went on to college and got a lot more freedom, and really that was the end of my schooling, because very quickly I found things to do that were much more interesting. I'm very glad I was part of the rave scene at that time, because it gave me an experience of a social environment that was really free. When I think of the mainstream alternative, it's really something very dull. You go to a crowded bar and drink overpriced alcohol, surrounded by people who all look quite similar because they're following some trend. and you're listening to music that no one really loves, it's just all that's on offer. And as an alternative to that, I was listening to my favourite DJs play music that I loved, surrounded by interesting and colourful characters from all walks of life. And I think in general, the further you get from the mainstream, the more interesting people you're likely to find, because they're being themselves, they're not trying to fit in. And I enjoyed that part of my life very much, partly because the social environment was so diverse and free of social convention. The rave crowd doesn't care about being normal, they just get on with being themselves. And I stayed with that crowd for many years, partly because the mainstream alternative was so dull in comparison. But as you get older, things change. You get tired of having no money, you get tired of working low-paid jobs. And so eventually you want to bring some decent money in, and that's not usually compatible with a party lifestyle. So it was inevitable that the days of hedonism had to come to an end as I started to want a better standard of living. So after a few years of drifting, I essentially blundered into financial services, which was quite fortunate because I'd given very little thought to how I was going to earn a living, and I had no skills or qualifications to speak of. But finance has an internal system of education consisting of qualifications you study while you're working, and so seeing an opportunity there, I attacked these qualifications. And after a while my salary started increasing until eventually I was being paid more than I thought I'd ever be paid in my life. And because that was the reason why I wanted this professional career in the first place, I saw that as a sign of progress, that things were going in a good direction. And certainly the money gave me a material standard of living that brought me a lot of satisfaction. And that kept me happy for quite a while. But gradually I became dissatisfied, and it happened quite slowly, but there was just a sense that I wasn't really doing something which allowed me to fulfill my potential. There was just a sense that I wanted to do more with my life, but I didn't know exactly what that was. And gradually this sort of undermined my commitment to the job that I was doing, and I became more and more dissatisfied until eventually I didn't want to do that anymore. But then that created a problem for me because, of course, I'd become accustomed to that level of money. And so the question of what I would do as an alternative to earn a decent standard of living brought up a lot of fear, and that kept me frozen in place, not knowing what to do for quite a few years. The journey through life is filled with disappointment. We get ideas about what we want, but all too often these things fail to satisfy us even when we obtain them. To begin with, I chose to pursue sensory pleasure in the hedonistic rave culture. This brought excitement and pleasure in the moment, but gave no lasting fulfillment. Then I decided to pursue the path of material enjoyment, which required money. I dedicated years of study to carve out a career, which funded many rich experiences. But over time, the real cost of office life took its toll. The meaningless work, the mindless procedures, and the general inhuman nature of the office environment. These things fueled a slow-building stress, which went from barely noticeable to all-consuming over the course of a number of years. As I approached the age of 30, I had many happy memories behind me and enough money to do whatever I wanted. But I was also troubled by a shadow of unhappiness, a desperate need to find fulfillment at a deeper level. I wanted to give to the world, to feel that my life had meaning and purpose. But beyond these vague ideas, I couldn't get a hold on what it was I was seeking. As I became hungry for a meaningful life, I grew disillusioned with the hollow culture I perceived around me. This drove me to look to other cultures, past and present, to learn what life was actually all about. One thing that struck me was how in most cultures there is a model where the elder generation passes on their wisdom to the younger generation. This contrasts sharply with the Western model, where the young and the elders are more concerned with enjoying life as much as possible. The more I learned about other cultures around the world, the more I longed for a deeper experience of life. The money from my job enabled me to visit other places, which gave me unforgettable memories of the people who invited me into their lives. But although these experiences changed my outlook, they did not enable me to change my life back home, and so my longing persisted. I recall at one point I finished reading a book called Way of the Peaceful Warrior, a story in which a happy old man schools an ambitious young athlete on how to live with wisdom. I remember clearly after reading this book how I wished that I had such a teacher, someone who could show me a better way to live, a life guided by wisdom, spiritual and meaningful. Over the years I've come to recognize "seek and you shall find" as a universal law. I believe that by creating the receptive energy to invite desirable conditions to come forward, a person can directly influence the course of their life experience. I was initially told about this, but my belief comes from verifying this creative power for myself. The starting point was this wish that I had a teacher, a desire for spiritual guidance. It was not long after making this wish that I was given what I needed. At a very low point in my life, I managed to get fired from my job. And being in that place, I didn't feel it was the right time to just slot back into the industry and carry on. So instead I took some temporary work at a hotel, just for a week as it turned out. And while I was there, I met a remarkable man from Malaysia who was a very warm person, very kind-hearted. He was a devout Buddhist, and we got talking about meditation, which I've been trying to practice myself. And he suggested that if I wasn't working past that week, then I might like to join him for a meditation retreat that he was doing up in the Lake District. And I felt that that was something that I'd really like to try. So I went along with it, and that turned out to be a very significant decision in my life. The community that gathered there was unlike anything that I'd experienced before. It was immensely supportive and caring, and the Buddhist philosophy and practice that was new to me was also something that really resonated with me, and I came away thinking that this was what I'd been looking for, a cohesive spiritual path that I could follow. And I came to regard that Malaysian man as a messenger who came into my life to bring me what I needed and what I'd asked for. But it didn't end there. At the meditation retreats, I met many wonderful people, but there was one who stands out, another very sincere and kind-hearted person. And we got talking and shared our stories, and we were talking about challenges that we'd had in our lives. And he said that one of the things that had helped him the most to overcome his challenges was that he discovered an ancient Chinese art of cultivating our life energy. The art's known as Qigong, Qi being our internal energy. And he'd learned this art from one of the world's foremost Qigong masters, who is based in Malaysia. And I remember being so impressed by what he was telling me about Qigong. And it wasn't just what he was telling me, it was the earnest way that he was telling it. I really felt like I could trust what he was saying. And I remember being so impressed that I thought, even if only half of this is true, I still want to experience it to find out what it's about. And after the meditation retreat was over, I decided that I really wanted to go to Malaysia. And so I did, to take an intensive Qigong course with this Grandmaster. At the Qigong course, I met many wonderful people from all over the world: Norway, Russia, Saudi Arabia. But again, there was one who stood out. In our conversations, he told me about some disturbances he was having in his household that were of a paranormal nature. And he told me that instead of ignoring it, he decided to engage a clairvoyant to get to the bottom of the matter. And the end result was that the clairvoyant was able to resolve the issue for him. And I'd never really given much thought at all to the paranormal, and I didn't have any strong feelings about it, either of belief or disbelief. But again, this what he was saying and his earnest way of telling me about it made me believe that he was telling the truth, and I was just curious enough to think that I wanted to look further into this, because it was something new to me and interesting. And so I looked into this clairvoyant that he put me in touch with, and he offers what is called a soul reading, which in my own interpretation, each of us is born with a certain package of energy. Some of it could be considered gifts and talents, and some of it gives us challenges, but collectively it gives us a journey in life. And a clairvoyant who is able to do a soul reading is able to read those energies and tell you a bit about your soul's journey and advise you on how you might develop your gifts and overcome your challenges. And that sounded interesting to me, so that's what I engaged this clairvoyant for, soul reading.
So today is the 19th of February 2009, and this is a session for Patrick. And I'm just going to start by describing what I see as being your soul energy, the energy that you were born with, at least this lifetime, to come here and work with. And there's something that comes up straight away.
The soul reading took place over the telephone, so the clairvoyant couldn't actually see me at all. And he started by asking for my name and my date of birth. Then after that, I didn't really talk much at all. He didn't ask any questions, he just talked and described my life, talking about my character, my qualities, my talents, and proceeding to give some advice on how I might develop those qualities. And he also talked a lot about the things that I was struggling with in life, the challenges that I had, and again, ways that I might work with those and overcome them. And it wasn't until after the call that I began to appreciate how someone who knew almost nothing about me and yet had managed to describe my life in ways that I couldn't have described myself. And there was a lot of fresh perspectives on things that I'd never really considered before that was very beneficial. And the whole experience really just opened my eyes to what lies beyond the senses and the human ability to go beyond the senses. And it was essentially as if I'd been given, it was like the last piece of the puzzle, the last part of the answer to my prayer for guidance, essentially. Because I'd been given 3 messengers, each one leading me to the next, with the result that I'd been given not 1 but 2 teachers. One who taught me an art of empowerment for spiritual cultivation, ultimately, and another who was more of a spirit guide. He acted as a counsellor, giving me advice and an insight. And at that point, it seemed like I had everything I needed for my spiritual journey. But in fact, there was something that was missing that I didn't appreciate, and that was love. But love was to come into my life in an unexpected way and to take me on a journey that was, and still is, quite incredible. Love is a feeling, and words are inadequate to convey that feeling to another person. But words are all I have. I met Melissa when I was 29. I'd always thought that the idea of settling down with one person for life was, for me, just unrealistic. It was never going to happen. But with Melissa, I very quickly changed my mind. The energy that came out of Melissa was very giving, kind-hearted. She always had a smile for everyone. She was always ready with a humorous take on situations. It was like she always wanted everyone to feel good. She never wanted anyone to feel bad in themselves. That was the energy that she brought to this world. It was a very loving energy, and to have that loving energy focused on me was wonderful. And I felt very much at home with her and in love. After the honeymoon period, you typically turn your attention to carving out a life together, which in this country is focused on buying a place to live. And our decision to do that coincided with a decision by the rulers of this country to inflate property prices to make everyone feel rich, supposedly. And that was interesting to witness from the standpoint of someone who doesn't want to get rich, they just want a place to live. And very quickly the prices became much higher than we were prepared to pay. And so we kind of gave up, which was very disappointing for me, but more so for Melissa. She came from the Caribbean, the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And there it's kind of a given that you have a place to live. If you have to build it yourself, you build it yourself. If you inherit it, you inherit it. But it's normal there. Renting is not really so normal. And having a home of her own was Melissa's dream. And so as that dream faded in this country, she started to view moving back home more favourably. And having never been to that part of the world, I couldn't have an opinion on it. And so we took a holiday there to give me a taste of the place and see what it was like. But also because she had made her mind up that that's what she wanted to do, to look for some land there to buy, so that we could build a house together. And so that's what we did.
Everlasting, this is the love that we share. Fierce, forever and ever. She's my girl. On and on and on. She's my girl. Get on. She's my girl. Again. Man, I laugh down the road. She a coming just a scrutinize her body. From end to the ground, the mouth of train just language. Them a fling down. Who would climb a cherry tree from who would pick up from? But I am here with the last to chop a tree down. No man, I look down, but right run down. Looks and a climb, woman, you know one down. You are done right for ready, show the tone, keep it down. She's my girl. She's my girl. She's my girl. She's my girl. Why? Oh, mommy, want you. Me no care if it me happy heart you. Me you love me now, share. Back to me.
St. Vincent gave me a vision of a future where I could achieve many of the things that I've been dreaming of. I've always dreamed of living close to nature and growing my own food and essentially doing meaningful work alongside members of the community. And in St. Vincent I saw people doing just that. Having that picture of what life could be like in St. Vincent, it made a dream come alive for me, and that was where my dream crossed over with Melissa's dream.
These are the things I see right in front of me.
As I open my eyes, oh, I give thanks to life. Yes, Lord.
As the days go by, yeah, out comes the sun, shining on my face again. Grades get me high so I can meditate. Dreams of brighter days. Highest grades we blaze. Dreams of brighter days. Giving thanks, giving thanks, giving thanks.
Giving thanks
As the
alive.
days goes by, giving.
Once Melissa had purchased a piece of land, she set about designing the house, and she showed a huge amount of creative energy. She taught herself how to use a professional design software kit and set about designing a house that was exactly what she wanted, whilst incorporating all of the features that I asked for, and also working within our budget. And that was not an easy process. There were numerous times where the house design had to be reconfigured completely. But each time one of these challenges came up, Melissa just got back to the drawing board and came up with a house design that was even better. So I don't know how we would have achieved it if it hadn't been for her remarkable persistence and determination in getting that design project complete. I think that the decision to move to St Vincent for Melissa wasn't very hard. She could see her dream materialising, and she was from there, so she knew how to handle life there. But for me, the decision was huge, with massive implications. I knew that I was going from a place where I had support networks and a comfortable life with marketable skills to a place where life was going to be much more challenging. In St Vincent, opportunities are scarce, and there are many skilled and capable people to compete with. So to earn a living there, you have to be quite resourceful. And it was clear to me that I was going to need to develop a lot of skills that were new to me. And the challenges that I could see in front of me brought up a lot of doubts, which created a lot of dilemmas for me. I worried whether I was making a wrong choice and what the implications of that would be. But even if I went along with it, I was concerned about what would be the best way to prepare for that new way of life. Should I carry on working and save as much money as I can? Or should I quit the job that wasn't teaching me anything useful and try to develop the skills that I was going to need in St Vincent? And these questions went around and around, and I felt that I needed some advice. And it was at that point I remembered the clairvoyant who'd given me such profound insights about 6 years before that. And so I got in touch with him, and we had a number of conversations over several months where we explored these questions. And as before, he put them in a surprising spiritual context.
The mind and the emotions, they go together, and they are very fickle because they are based on the experiences that we've had in our lives so far. It's all past-based. It's nothing to do with what comes. It's always about what's happened before, and particularly about things that we get afraid of. So if we've experienced something when we're young, where we get afraid of that experience, it gave us some feelings we didn't like, then what happens is the mind and emotions formulate strategies to try to protect us from that. And so they are constantly viewing what comes up in front of us in the present and passing it through that protection mechanism, trying to all the time keep us away from having to have a possibility of experiencing that again. But that is the same roundabout over and over and over and over, and it never changes. And it's not necessarily what our soul wants us to do in our life.
No.
Maybe part of our soul's journey is actually to have experienced that fear and that problem, and then to experience overcoming it by making some different choices that don't follow the same pattern, so that we get the possibility to feel a different outcome for the same kind of circumstances. It means that whatever is put in front of you your perspective on that, and by that I'm talking about these decisions that you're trying to make. Those decisions are then having to struggle between the standpoint that you're at right now based on all of your past experience and what you haven't wanted to feel, and the energies that you were born with about the things, the journey that you want to make. And so there's a struggle that you face all the time with that. When you follow the mind and emotions, you're just doing the same stuff as the past. You're buying into those things you didn't want to feel, the things that you're trying to avoid, the protective mechanisms that you put in place. Those are all things that you've kind of learned and taken a view about, a judgment about how that is. At the same time, you've got these energies that you're born with, which is your soul's journey, that is trying to encourage you to kind of go this way, not hang on to this past experience. And that, of course, is all part of the journey, is the struggle that comes up. And so the only real true answer to anything comes if you can truly get past that and look at what your heart, soul is encouraging you to do. If you're of a mind that life has to be difficult and you have to have this much money to survive, and all of the emotions and feelings that are going on inside you about that structure actually mean that is how it has to be. And if you can break that structure and let go of it so that you're at ease with everything inside you, whatever meets you, you will find a way to meet it and deal with it, and everything will be fine. And if you can have that kind of structure inside you, then the things that you're talking about right now will cease to be a problem.
Okay.
I understand the traditional way, of course, is to look at amount of money and like the financial situation that you'll be in when you get there, and I get all of that. But when you have a mind structure that is needing it to be in a certain way, like, oh well, then I have to have £15,000 for this and that, then you have to have that. Whereas if you think, well, it'll be okay, I'll manage whatever it is, whatever's thrown at me, I'm okay. I always have more than enough. If you have that kind of attitude, that I always have more than enough, then you will always have more than enough. And so the stress that you put yourself under to meet these criteria for needing to save as much money as possible and it's all to meet your own structure that you actually put in place. The universe doesn't put it in place, you do.
I knew that Martin was giving me good advice, and gradually I became comfortable with the decision to move to St. Vincent. But the decision I really struggled with was quitting my high-paid job, because the money gave me a sense of security, even though the job made me very unhappy. Sadly, I'd fallen into a mindset which is very common in England. I saw my value in my relationship as linked to the amount of money that I put on the table. Certainly considering the uncertainty over how much money I could earn in St. Vincent, it seemed reckless or irresponsible to deliberately cut off my earnings in order to go and learn some skills. And that sense that I was being reckless and what that would mean froze me in place, even though it was making me very unhappy. And despite the impact that was having on my relationship, I was retreating into myself, just trying to get through each day. And as a consequence, the intimacy slowly drained away from the relationship. And we became two people who were going along together with a shared vision of the future where things would be better. And that belief that things would be fixed down the line prevented me from looking at the things that were coming up, which really needed to be addressed. When I learned that Melissa had cancer, I was certainly afraid, but perhaps I was less afraid than many people would be in that situation, because I know that Western medicine is not the only way to treat cancer. There are many alternative methods, and in my opinion, most of them are more effective and less harmful than what the doctors can do for you. For me, I was most familiar with Qigong, which was the art of energy that I'd gone to Malaysia to learn. And in the school that I practice with, there are many cases of people who've overcome cancer, as well as many other supposedly incurable diseases, just by practicing Qigong. And I was aware that there was a clinic in Malaysia that specializes in Qigong therapy for treatment of serious diseases. And I felt that there was a lot of promise in this route. But Melissa was uncertain because the doctors were insisting that she begin chemotherapy immediately. And it's understandable that she was inclined to listen to the doctors. But when the final test results came back, they abruptly changed their prognosis. Up until that point, they'd been telling us it was very treatable, the outlook was good. Then when they realized the strain of cancer she had, they changed their minds and said, oh, actually, it's not good. And I feel that produced a shift in Melissa to want to look at alternatives that might offer better prospects. And she decided that she would like to try the Qigong, and so I made arrangements for us to go to Malaysia as quickly as possible.
The situation for Melissa, I need to say something to you, Patrick, about it. There are never any coincidences, and this has come into your life for a reason. And what it feels like to me is I understand what you say, that these are difficult emotions and you feel like you have to try and deal with them in a logical manner. But actually, the opposite is true. The thing that it calls on in you is to dare to open to this bucket full of horrific experience, emotion that you're thinking it might be, and let yourself feel it and cry and scream and whatever else it takes. Because from that point, then I could agree with what you said. Then you can look at, well, what can we do now? But whilst you hold all of that together, or at least try to hold it all together, you don't actually have a chance to deal with things in the way they need to be dealt with. You're sinking underneath all these emotions that you're trying to hold together, but you need to let yourself feel it and cry and whatever it is that comes up. And then from that place, then having come out the other side of that bucket full of stuff, then you're in a position where you can look at, well, so what do we do now? But anything you try to do from this side of the bucket it's not going to be helpful, because it's clouded all the time by all those emotions that you don't want to feel. The actual thing that I could see about you and about Melissa and about this whole situation is that it's actually a lifeline. I don't know quite how to explain that, but it feels like a lifeline because, in a way, if we take Melissa out of the picture for a moment, for you, what is happening with Melissa being ill, this is like a kick in the ass for you. Because there's an opportunity here where the person that you are wanting to share your life with is seriously ill to the point where she could die. And it's actually trying, I think, to get through to you, to let yourself feel and express what you're feeling. Because I believe that the reason that you're feeling dead and out of touch with everything is because you're not letting yourself. There's a part of what is happening to you that is, you are not letting yourself really feel what you're feeling. You're not expressing it, you're not into the feeling of it. You recognize it, but you keep a lid on it. And this is an opportunity where it gives you a big kick to give you a chance to actually let yourself feel and react. Because the reason that you feel dead and disconnected and feeling like you need to get away and everything is useless and no good is because you're not letting yourself feel what it is. So you're surrounded by your mental impression of it instead of experiencing what it feels like and then it's over with. Because that's what emotions are, they come and they go. The winter comes and it goes again, and it comes back again next year. But that's just a very simplistic idea. But that's actually how emotions are. They come and they go, and when they come and they press on you, and they want to be felt, they want you to express, they want you to react in what it makes you want to do, and to do it. And when you've done that, it's over. But if you don't, you carry it, and it weighs you down, and it makes life more and more and more difficult. So the way forward is to unload the bag. And you just got a huge opportunity with Melissa to unload. So I would encourage you to do that.
It's not the case that I didn't respond to this clear advice from Martin. I immediately set time aside to go down into these troubling emotions and bring some of those feelings up. And I did experience a release of some of that pain. But having done that, I turned my attention to what I saw as being more important, which was the practical arrangements for our trip to Malaysia. And that focus on the practical, what we were doing and what we were going to do next, that was a focus that I maintained at the expense of feeling what was going on and expressing how I felt about what was happening. By the time we arrived in Malaysia, I was very concerned about Melissa. She'd been signed off work for a while, and she just had no energy at all. She just used to lie on the sofa all day. She wasn't eating. She was clearly very unwell. And so when we got to Malaysia, I was feeling very uneasy. But when we got to the Qigong clinic and began the exercises, Melissa took to it straight away. She was a great student from the very beginning. She just ran with it, and it was like she suddenly recovered. She had abundant energy. Her appetite came back. It was like she wasn't ill. And from that point on, it was like we were on holiday, just visiting different places between the classes. and just enjoying our time there. And that continued for the month or so we were doing the treatment. Then after that we decided to continue the holiday. And at some point it was like the momentum was lost. The positive energy that came from the new environment and the Qigong started to fade. And I noticed that Melissa's enthusiasm wasn't the same, and that she started to get tired and not eat so much. And shortly after, she started to experience new symptoms, which was very troubling. And it became apparent that she was getting worse. And so we decided to come home. And when we got home, there was a real sense that what we'd done hadn't been enough. Because the Qigong had not been enough, I was not surprised when Melissa decided to start conventional treatment when we got home. I didn't have any confidence in chemotherapy, and I was convinced that everything depended on what else we could do. I started researching alternative ways to fight cancer, and it soon became clear that nutrition was hugely important. The more I searched, the more stories I heard of people who had overcome cancer using a holistic approach, with nutrition as the central focus. There were even people who had recovered from a terminal diagnosis in this way, which gave me hope and inspiration. I felt that by combining the power of nutrition and Qigong, Melissa could get through the chemo and make a full recovery. Seeing the outlook as positive, I dedicated myself to this holistic program and in providing Melissa with everything that was needed. When the chemotherapy started, the effects were much harder than I anticipated. I had expected that there would be good and bad days, but once the poison became effective, Melissa's well-being declined sharply in every way. To my dismay, she no longer had the energy to practice her Qigong, and she was too sick to consume the food and drinks I prepared for her. Days went by when she ate nothing at all, and I grew increasingly concerned. I urged her to take in the nutrients she desperately needed, even though they made her feel queasy. She tried her best each day, but I could see she was getting worse. A few weeks later, the medical professionals confirmed that the chemo had failed, and so there was nothing more they could do. When the medical professionals gave up, I didn't see that as a bad thing, because from the very beginning, their influence had been profoundly negative. So with them gone, I saw that we could focus on the Qigong, the nutrition, and everything else. But I'd failed to see that I was the one fighting. Melissa had been dealt a hammer blow by the medical professionals telling her there was no hope. And she didn't share my conviction that she was going to get well. But in my mind, there was no doubt she would. And so all my energy was invested in that outcome. But her friends and family were more attuned to what she actually needed, and they surrounded her with love. And one day we gathered together to sing and pray. And when we did, the effect on Melissa was striking. She was peaceful, she was open, she was herself again. And I took that as a positive sign that things were about to change. And so later that day, I arranged to speak to Martin and his wife Suzanne to discuss the best way forward. And once again, they surprised me by talking about what this situation was trying to show me about how I was living my life. I think what I'm doing is I'm holding it together by fighting. Without basically when things get so bad that there's no hope, that's when I realise, how much it is going to hurt if she dies. So I've come into contact with that, and it's
tell me about that.
Well, it's just like you're going to have a screaming meltdown kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's just like there's something bubbling over.
But you don't have the screaming meltdown. No.
Why not?
Because it always happens in an appropriate time. You know, I'll be at the cinema watching a film. I don't know if you've seen Ip Man 3. The lead character is this kung fu master, and he's got a wife, and he's torn between protecting the community with his kung fu skills and his wife, and she gets cancer. And it was just so the reference to cancer and how she sort of withered away while he had his attention somewhere else. It was just struck home. And so I nearly had a breakdown in the cinema, but it's like that kind of thing. It's always inconvenient.
But why was it inconvenient in the cinema? Why didn't you have a meltdown right there in the seat?
Because that's crazy.
Why is it crazy?
Well, that would be the craziest thing I've ever seen. A big guy in the cinema wailing about in a kung fu film.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
You did. So then what? So why didn't you?
Well, I didn't think it was appropriate, that's all.
Okay, but you see, Patrick, that's what this is about for you. You know, we're talking about what is Melissa's journey. Your journey is to learn that there is no appropriate or inappropriate. There just is what there is.
It's a little bit like that you put your mental picture of actually what's allowed and what's not allowed in the front.
What would happen if you saw a big guy who had a meltdown in the cinema, like we had it, just started bawling his eyes out in the cinema whilst he was watching this film? What was going to happen?
Nothing.
Okay. If nothing was going to happen, you were going to let your feelings come out. You were actually going to have this meltdown. You were going to let it out and just, this thing that really needs getting out. It's like you were watching a film, the film that you chose to watch. We never do anything by coincidence.
No, we don't, no.
So you choose to watch this specific film so that you got the opportunity to actually get some of those feelings out that are really, really hard to keep inside. It's like a bubbling kettle that you're walking around with. It's like a grenade that's about to explode. So here we're saying, here you go. You can explode here in the dark. Nobody knows you here. Just go for it. That's what films are for. That's what we have music and film. We have art because they help us to get in touch with our emotions again. We have flowers, we have beauty, because it's so important that we can actually clean out and get in touch with our heart again. Otherwise, we get cancer because we become icebergs. We keep it all locked in, and then where is it going to go? Well, it has to go somewhere, so it becomes tumors. And for you, the journey is for you to actually learn that it's okay. It's not inappropriate. It's okay for you to express how you feel. It's okay for you to let it out.
Can you see that we've kind of had this conversation quite a few times during...
I can. Yeah.
Because, if it's not about one thing, it's about another. It's about, whether it was okay to shout at her or whether it was... It's been the same kind of topic the whole time, and really saying to you that, there's a message here. I need to take my restrictions away from allowing myself to express what I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. And if you're not doing that, if you're not taking the restrictions away, it means that something else is more important. And the thing that's come up here with the cinema is, of course, you're putting up in front, it was more important not to make a fool of yourself or not to be the one who did that, because no one ever does that, or there'll be a lot of things you could be thinking about it, but you made that more important than freely expressing what you were feeling.
I think it's just come into my head that it's like, if you have this kind of emotional reaction where you're almost letting your feelings just sort of bubble over whenever things like that happen, you're just this hysterical person who doesn't have any control over himself and just get a grip, basically. That's the kind of attitude that people
so
have.
you think that people respect the person more that can hold it all in?
Yeah.
Do you respect people that can hold it all in?
Well, yes. Yes.
Well, okay, so look at the situation you've then created. You've gotten together with a girl, Melissa, who's holding it all in. And the one thing that you're most angry about and screaming at her is that she's holding it all in. Let it fucking hell go! Because you know that this is what's creating her cancer. And even so, if she were to let it all go, you would think that she lost it. Then she is the same as you, well then people won't respect me. So the two of you have the same theme going on, and the two of you are holding it all in because you're afraid that if you lose it, someone is going to disrespect you. Isn't it amazing how you've chosen each other that are showing this precisely the same thing to each other?
Yeah.
And she's wanting you to lose it so that you show your love and cry over her, and you're wanting her to lose it so that she cries and screams and gets it all out. And none of you are wanting to go there. And you can really help each other to simply get out there, but you have to then both of you start to have a meltdown. And Melissa will find it easier to have meltdowns if you have meltdowns, because then it's like, oh, well, it's not so scary then, because, oh, Patrick also does it, well, then, I can do it too. But if you keep it all together all the time, then you're not going to expect that someone else is going to then just suddenly have a meltdown. How can you?
Well, I can't see any other people that are like that. It's like today, it's like, if I was being true to my feelings, I would have been bawling in the prayer ceremony because it was a beautiful thing.
So why weren't you?
Because
why were you not doing that? Why on earth were you not doing that? That's who you are. Why weren't you? Don't you think that that's what they want to see?
As it was in the beginning, so it was in the end. My heart wanted me to feel, but I couldn't do it.
All we're asking for ourselves always is to be able to be ourselves. And the way life works for us, what our soul does for us, is that it puts in front of us opportunities to actually move forward, to move through what we need to move through, to experience, to release, whatever it is it's calling for. And if we don't take the opportunity, then it has to create something else that's even stronger. And if we don't take that opportunity, then it creates something even stronger. And it's like each time the experience gets stronger and stronger and stronger until you pay attention.
I think the first thing I would say is life is wonderful. It's wonderful whether it's being really shitty or whether it's being really fantastic, whether it's really sad or whether it's really happy. Life is wonderful because we get the opportunity to feel it, to experience it. Because in the place we come from, we don't. We don't get the possibility to feel all those things. And that's why we choose to come here, is because we get the possibility to feel it all. So life is very rich. It's never always happy, it's never always sad. It's always up and down in a mixture. And the worst thing that we can possibly do is stop ourselves from feeling it. The bad stuff and the good stuff. All of it, whatever it is. The worst thing we can do is to stop ourselves from feeling it, because then there becomes no point in being here. Because that's actually what it's about.
Maybe it would be helpful if I say a couple of other things first. About what happens when we die. Because when we die, the end result is that we travel from here to the place where we come from. Call it heaven, call it whatever you like. It doesn't matter what the label is.
The place in between, or God.
But there's a place that on the journey from leaving here to going to the place where we come from, there's an in-between land that you have to travel through. And the in-between land, we get an opportunity, some of us get the opportunity to stay there.
We choose to stay there.
That's more. We choose to stay there for some time. But then we go on to the place to heaven. And when we're in the in-between land, that is what we would normally call a ghost.
So they're still looking at this world. They're still conscious of this world.
And that's actually the point. The ghosts still have all the restrictions and habits and emotional baggage. They still have the same thing as you and I.
As they did when they were alive.
Yeah. Once we go to heaven, then all of that baggage, all of that emotional stuff that disappears. Not like it vanishes, but that we understand it. It kind of like is incorporated. And because in heaven there is only love, Patrick. That's all there is. And part of the reason for us being here is actually trying to understand that, trying to understand what it is, because if you're just totally in it all the time, you don't really have a concept of what it represents, of what it means, of its far-reaching effects.
It's like night and day. If you only have day, you don't know
what night is. Yeah. So we come and live on Earth because we want to find out. So we restrict ourselves on Earth in different ways, and there's billions of people all with different formulations of this, but we restrict love in different ways. And so we get the experience of how it is to be living with bits or many bits of love missing in our life.
To understand
what it is. So here we go. We're on Earth and we have all those restrictions, whatever restrictions we've actually chosen to come here and restrict ourselves with. And then we go through this no man's land where we still carry that baggage with us. And then we go to heaven where we are free of it. And we understand it, and we bring that understanding with us. But from heaven, you can also visit Earth. You can visit the people that you love, the people that you've had lives with. You can come and see them and interact with them.
To support them.
Yeah, but when you do that from heaven, you come back just carrying that love, because that's all there is in heaven. And that, in Suzanne's and my words, is something you would call a spirit as opposed to a ghost.
Yes.
I'm making the two different labels so that you understand the difference.
Yes.
And so when we go to heaven and we come back, we come as a spirit and we come with just a pure loving energy. And what that is a total understanding of what you're struggling with, and just really wanting to love you and support you and give you whatever they can give you. And of course, one of the questions you might have is, well, where's Malaysia on that route? And we can come to that and answer that question for you, because I realize you would like to know that.
This is a little bit difficult for me to share with you, but I have to do it anyway. It's like I see Melissa because I was just trying to look at her in this situation. But I've also had her stood right beside me and leaning over, like almost looking from here onto your screen, and she wanted to write something. And I was wondering what it was, but as much as I could get hold of what it was, she wanted me to say to you, go away.
In what sense?
sort of means stop hanging on to me. Basically, when you really want someone to stop following you and to like stop hanging on, one of the expressions you use is go away.
That sounds a bit irritable, like she's annoyed with me.
Yeah, but maybe it's just about finding, I mean, like I said to you again, this is the best that I could get to what it was. And so, yes, I can feel that there was a like, go away, Patrick, because I'm going away. It's like, when are you going to get the message? Like, this isn't about for you and me to be together. I know this is really hard, and I actually feel quite cruel when I'm saying this, so it's actually hard for me, but I realize I have to share it because it was shown to me.
Yeah, you have to, but I just...
And I know it's hard, but it actually is the message.
The situation that I was seeing, because I was talking a moment ago and I said I'd give you an answer to where I feel Malaysia is, in terms of the journey from going from here to heaven, and in my experience with working with a lot of ghosts and also with spirits, but the experiences that I've had tell me that sometimes we stay as a ghost when we die for various reasons. One of them can be that you're in the middle of doing something that's really important to you that you haven't finished. And so your attachment to the physical world is so strong because you want to finish that project, whatever it was, because it meant so much to you. So that when you actually die and you're supposed to go to heaven, you stay around because that drive in you is so strong to want to complete this thing.
So you try to
stay here.
Yeah.
So that's one reason. But another, the most common reason why we get held in the ghost realm is because of the attachment that the people that we've left behind have to us. That they don't let us go, that they try to hold on to us because they have they miss us probably desperately, or there could be a lot of variations on this thing, but it's the most common reason why ghosts stay around is because they can't leave, because they are all the time pulled by the people that they've left behind. And what I wanted to say to you in the answer, which is why I felt this was going to confirm what Suzanne was saying, is because what I see in Malaysia right now is that she hasn't yet gone to heaven, but she's trying desperately to go, and she's feeling held.
I feel like she's right on the border of it,
yeah.
Which is why I'm seeing her come in both ways. Because she's really, it's like she's had a glimpse of where she's going, and at the same time she's needing to say some things like to you, so she realizes she has to somehow finish this something that's holding.
So the part you can play is, I think that's partly what the message was from Suzanne that she was picking up from Malaysia, was please let me go, Patrick. Please stop holding on to all of what you think I want and missing me, and take hold of your own life.
It's like
get in the driving seat of your own life and decide what you want to do, and that will free me. And it's not a hurtful thing she's trying to say. She's actually saying you need to do that for yourself, but also for me, because I need to get to heaven, and you need to get on with your life.
Yeah. It's not about that you can't be sad and can't remember her, but it's about not holding on to her and understanding that your purpose together was this. that it actually was this journey, that what the whole thing was about was this journey together that you made. And that it isn't more than that. It's like it was what it was, and it is what you both got out of it, which is huge. You have to understand that it was her choice to have these experiences as well. However hard and however we can't understand that. Why on earth would we want that? But something, only she knows what it gave her. It's like when she looks at that, she says, "Oh my God, it was huge." From where she is now, it's like the light that comes. She tries to show me it with like an angel light, like saying, "You have." Oh yeah, she's just confirming it. It like was such an emphasis of, you have absolutely no idea the vastness of what this life experience gave me, of knowledge, of. Oh, she can't even describe it. It's just so big.
I just can't. I can't.
You can't accept that?
Her suffering while she was alive.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I had a friend who died of AIDS, and he also had a lot of suffering. He was one of my oldest friends. And he came, and for several years as a ghost, I was like, he stood trying to get hold of me in all ways he could, because he needed to get an important message to me. Finally, in the end, Martin was able to get the message. And the one thing he was here to tell me was, it was all worth it. Every single thing I experienced, all the suffering, all the hardship, he said it was all worth it. And it's the same message that Melissa is saying now. It was all worth it. And it was like, it was more than worth it. It was glorious in the like beautiful light. It's like she shows me like a crystal, almost like light lit up of joy, of light. Like she says, the vastness of that experience. Wow, I can't even, that's the only way she can explain it to me. With feelings of these, the like angels, like of this, yeah, like just this vastness of what it meant to her. Huge. And I know it's hard for us to understand and to accept that, because how could that be? When we sit here and we judge it from where we're sat, how on earth could that be possible?
Yeah, it just seems like a tragedy, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that message that came from my friend, then it has carried so much weight in me. And I mean, I am forever grateful. And Melissa is giving me the same now. I mean, fantastic. And I'm so grateful for those messages, because it really helps us in times when we just believe that everything is just so horrible, that they're still telling us, even the hardest of the hardest, it's still worth it. Gives us so much.
Yeah.
But it's hard for us to understand. We don't feel it's fair. We can't possibly imagine that it could be like that, because our sense of fairness is so strong and is based on such small margins of what we, you know, black and white. But it just isn't like that.
It's because our minds are all the time focused on wanting to exist, and our minds exist only in the physical. And so we have this situation where our minds are wanting to exist, and so the focus of the mind is about the future, is about what's coming. And when someone dies like this, the mind really has a problem with it and goes into a lot of sadness and struggle, because it's based on what they didn't get of the future that our minds are building a picture of.
That they think, should it been?
Should it? Yeah, exactly. And it's a mental idea about the future, and because our minds are all the time focused on that.
She keeps going, oh my God, you have no idea what I got out of it. It's like she keeps saying that over and over, like putting her hands up, like, oh, it was huge.
The only way I can interpret that is like what you were saying about when we are in heaven, to call it, we have nothing but love, and so we come back with bits of love missing to find out more about what it is.
Yes.
So the only way I can interpret it is that she understands a lot more from her life experience, even though it seems very unfulfilling.
And that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's precisely how it is. Understanding that we suddenly get from that, and it's ginormous.
So it was worth it then for her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's always worth it. Every single experience is worth it. Doesn't mean that it isn't hard, and it's worth it for all of us that also touched it.
And the message that's coming now, of course, is kind of like in a really strong way, Patrick. For God's sake, take hold of your own life and decide what you want to do now.
Don't put your eyes down, you're not to blame. I know there are stories you can't explain, but if I should find you black and blue and aching from crying, I'll wait with you. Grow, grow. Oh, so you know it all, then it's gone. Grow, grow. You know I'm here holding on, tying up your loose ends and you're drifting a steam. Try, you'll never know. I've left you a white page by the door. There's no need to ask me what it's for. I'll wait by the front step for your return and hear every story of what you learned. Oh, so you know it all, then it's gone. Grow, grow. You know I'm here holding on, tying up your loose ends and you're drifting a steam. Grow, grow. Try, you'll never know. Grow, 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 grow.
In my life, I've always had a deep interest in the world, a desire to learn how the world is. And I've also had difficulties relating to and interacting with other people. And that combination made me into quite an introverted person. And the problem with that is that it makes you susceptible to becoming disconnected from the full experience of life. You start to fall into ideas about the world rather than just experiencing it directly. And where I am today, I can appreciate how my ideas about the world became very complex and intricate. They weren't wrong, but they were just my take on the world. And because I was not happy, they were excessively influenced by the negative aspects of life rather than the uplifting aspects. And Martin described it once that I had become surrounded by my mental impression of the world rather than experiencing it directly. And this was true. I was essentially living in a mental world. And I don't think that's uncommon in our society. It was my Qigong master, who first taught me that the human being is comprised of 4 aspects: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And in order for us to be fully alive, all 4 aspects must be engaged. And when you live in a mental world, as we do often in the Western world, and particularly in England, when you suppress your emotions, we tend to do that a lot. We don't really think of it as that, but emotions are seen as something messy and disruptive. And so we almost, by cultural conditioning, we're taught to suppress our emotions as something that's not helpful, inappropriate. And when you do that, when you suppress your emotional self, your spiritual self also begins to close, because we are supposed to live in this way as 4 fully developed, fully engaged aspects. And so when you shut down one, another begins to wither, and then we're left with the physical and the mental. And so in a very real sense, we're only half alive. I now know that that was the cause of my depression. It wasn't anything to do with my job or anything that was lacking in my life. It was because I was not really living. And so that's what this journey was about for me, to reconnect with those aspects that I had been suppressing all my life. Life is full of choices, the sum of which is the world we create for ourselves. We go through life choosing this or that, based on the drives we have within us. Some of these we are consciously aware of, but others we are not. As I look back on the paths I've chosen in life, it's like I've been in the dark the whole time, even though I was given excellent advice by many people. I now realize the value of looking inward, because had I done so, I might have been able to hear a quiet voice that was talking to me. Like many people who get the chance, I chose to pursue comfort and pleasure, focusing on external conditions to make me feel good. This continued long after I realized it was a road to nowhere, because a fear of not having enough had taken hold of me. But all the time I knew deep down that this was the wrong path. There was a drive in me to break free and do something different. This was my heart trying to get through to me, but it was shouted down by the mind, telling me that financial security was the most important thing. I asked the universe for guidance, and a series of people came into my life to take me on a journey, giving me opportunities to connect with my heart, to experience love, and to live out a dream. I can now appreciate how our energy attracts people and experiences that encourage us to be free, which is what the soul desires. Our life experiences are constantly showing us where we need to go, what we need to deal with, but it is up to us whether we pay attention. The answer is usually right in front of us, in some pattern we keep repeating. But until we are willing to be honest about what is going on, nothing can change. There is a tendency to view suffering as a negative experience. But in fact, times of hardship are the times where we grow the most, where we realize who we are and we experience life at the fullest intensity. As I realized this, I learned to accept experience I did not want, to see the gift of understanding that was being offered to me. This realization is important if we are to face the things we want to avoid the most, sickness and death, which come to all of us in time. And so, even in the most unwelcome tragedy, there is a chance to grow if we see it for what it is and just flow with what life has to give us. I believe that this is the real key to happiness, seeing our journey through life as a brief opportunity to feel and experience as much as possible. In this world, there are those who believe in the afterlife, and those who believe that the energy that we are is extinguished when we die. But I don't feel that beliefs change anything. Life is a gift that is not promised for any length of time, and so the greatest way to honor that gift is to live it to the fullest. Don't hold back because of fear, of what might happen if you show who you really are. Instead, just feel what is happening right now, right this moment, because this moment is truly all we ever have.
It's about getting back to the value of what really matters in life. And actually what really matters is that we learn to communicate with our heart and thereby do what our heart is encouraging us to do, so that we collect what we came for. And the collection is about the experiences. It's about the enjoyment. It's about the sadness. It's about everything. It's about what we experience, all of it. I had one last thing to add.
Yes?
Do you know, is there an old tree that's on St. Vincent, that Malaysia, that's close to where they lived, or?
Well, there's plenty. There's what?
Was there a special one, is what I'm asking.
Why?
It was just something, when I was trying to just communicate with Malaysia, what else could she say about this ritual or information for her brother or whatever. And she was trying to show me this old tree, and I didn't really understand totally what it was. That's why I was asking you, is there an old tree that actually was part of something that was special to her or something like that? It's to do with, I feel like she's been trying to, at least with me, give me information that will help her brother understand or believe
that it's her.
Yeah.
All my life I've been fascinated by the synchronicities of human interaction. How there seems to be a purpose behind the people we encounter, even briefly. Long before I met Melissa, I had an appreciation of how life works this way. The messengers who came into my life to bring me my teachers and other things I needed had left me in no doubt. But the journey I went on with Melissa showed me that there's a story and a purpose behind these connections. And it's opened my eyes to what we're doing here on this earth. We're souls interacting with each other to give each other experiences so that we can learn and grow. And I believe that each soul has a unique journey it wants to make in order to collect certain experiences. And I believe that the key to a truly fulfilling life is in discovering as much as possible about the journey. And one of the best ways to do that is to pay attention to the people who come into your life. When you realize they're not there by accident, it's easier for you to see the gift they're bringing to you, the message, the reflection of yourself that they're showing to you. And when you gain that perspective, it's easier for you to see the connections and the patterns that keep repeating in your life. And these patterns are really signposts showing you what you need to deal with, what you need to address, the things you're afraid of, and ultimately the things that stand between you and freedom, the freedom to pursue what you really want. And when you realize how other souls keep coming into your life to bring you what you need, to show you what you need to deal with, you don't take them for granted anymore. And that opens the door to some very deep relationships. And ultimately, I believe that that's why we're here, to dare to love each other.
outside of you is ever going to change that. Nothing. Ever. Because whatever comes up on the outside, you will always react on the pattern that you have going on inside. matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what beliefs you have. Ultimately, if you look at the different religions in the world, they all come back to the same thing. It's there's God. If you want to call it God, then you might have another name for that also. But there's a supreme power, origin of everything. And we all try in our own methods through the different religions to live the life that we think is honouring that. And there's space for all of it. And when someone is struggling, it doesn't matter which religion you are, you can help them. When someone is in pain, you can help them. And it may change their view of you, it may change their view of what they believe in, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's about love between human beings, caring for one